everyone. My name is Bonnie, and today we have San Juan, sorry, San Juan,
Go on.
Shawan. Today we have Shawan Alexander joining us for a topic over ethical career expansions. Super important conversation. I'm super excited for you all to learn from her today. Before we get started, I'll just go ahead and share some information on our CE. This is a 1 hour CE credit. As you see and learn from this topic today. And this is specifically for social workers and therapists, understanding beyond our roles in ethical career expansion. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself. I am with Agents of Change, the continuing education team lead here, facilitating this training today for you all. I do have a background in social work and also have experience in the social work field with foster children, giving clinical services to adults and children, also with migrant youth. So I'm excited today to learn on this topic, as I hope you all are excited today, to learn about the ethics behind our career and how to expand this here. So let's learn more about our presenter. She is a licensed clinical social worker and supervisor based out of Houston, Texas, with a licensure in Texas, Missouri, and Florida. Of course, we're working on that compact, right? She does have those licenses in those states. She's also the founder of Culture of Health, and this is where she provides therapy services for mothers seeking to reclaim their identity while balancing personal, professional, and caregiving demands, which is such an important population to serve. So thank you so much for serving that population. Um, Her niche includes millennial women of color, particularly healthcare workers, first responders, and mental health professionals, navigating these complex stresses where we hear these stories of grief, workplace expectations, and of course, questions of worthiness and life direction. So, in addition to her therapy practice, she has built a very successful clinical supervision program facilitating 3 weekly supervision groups at a total of 16 supervisees that she has there. So super great to see your work there. She's also trained clinicians in migration evaluations through her IEGA program, which is a 5 week virtual cohort designed to help clinicians understand their clinical role in social advocacy, conductive, effective interviews, and to complete comprehensive evaluations, interviews, as well as objective reports with those migrant evaluations. She's very passionate about teaching education, consulting with clinicians and private practice owners who are a multi passionate in what they serve and also wants to ethically expand their impact. So that's what we're here to do today for you all, giving that ethical background in this. So as we get started, we're going to learn about why this topic is so important for us. Many of us, as mental health professionals, social workers, therapists, clinicians, we're seeking ways to expand our impacts, increase our professional sustainability, and use our clinical skills in ways that we are applying our ethics beyond our therapy room. How is it that we can serve our community? How is it that we can fill in any gaps, right? We're social workers, we're trying to figure out how to help everyone. And so here we're going to understand how to do this ethically. Of course, maybe kind of looking at ensuring that we're not crossing any boundaries with dual relationships and stuff like that. So we'll be getting into some of these things here to avoid any role confusion, practice outside of our competence, and any unintentional things that could create harm with our clients. So we're going to go ahead and explore these things and pursue hopefully these new opportunities that could be coming our way. Also understanding why this is important. It's going to support mental health professionals in thinking critically about how career expansion can align with ethics, advocacy, financial stability, and professional identity. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get into this and have a conversation over our ethics here. So I'd like to see if we can kind of open up with understanding how many social workers and therapists are kind of taught to think that their career path is either agency work or private practice, maybe not both, right? So I'd like for you to share with us what helped you begin to imagine a broader professional path for yourself.
Yes, Bonnie, thank you for asking such a great question and for giving a warm introduction. For me, when I think about expanding, I think about myself in grad school and what we were taught as clinicians almost a decade ago. So I graduated in 2017 from the University of Houston, and I remember being in class and being primarily taught how to do therapeutic skills, how to show up in the spaces in community mental health, and a lot of research and macro opportunities were there as well. But if you were on a clinical track, it was almost like the best thing you would do after you finish graduating or get your license was explore clinically what that looked like for you as a professional. So for many of us, we automatically went into medical roles as social workers, worked with veterans, or either private practice, and that was looked at as the most sustainable role you could have during that time.
Yeah, definitely. I've heard that as well. And it's like where to go to make sure that we're in the right field.
Yes.
Are there any specific moments when you realize your clinical skills could be used beyond the therapy room?
Absolutely. I think I realized it probably in year one, which is really early. Even now, as I consult with other clinicians, they always ask that question. It's like, when do I know when to leave therapy to pursue something different? It's usually internally first, and you're getting a sign from yourself saying, I don't know if I can do this forever. And that's not a bad feeling to have or a bad thought to think, even when you invested yourself in your career and started this business. But for me, I can remember sitting with clients back to back, seeing around 6 or 7 clients and one day, barely having time to take a sip of water or go to the restroom without fear of being late for my next session, and then having to jump through the emotional loops of leaving someone who was experiencing an in-depth trauma where I felt dramatically affected by what just happened, but in 2 minutes have to smile and welcome a new client. So for me, it was a shift in recognizing I didn't know if I really appreciated the emotional wheelhouse I was jumping through on top of the long hours and then the documentation, and not to mention anything with insurance. So it was a few different reasons that led up to me wanting to expand, but looking at how can I use the same skill that I have, which is connecting with my clients, building rapport, treatment planning, and apply it to somewhere different that also gave me the same amount of fulfillment.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for sharing that. And I
Of
think
course.
what you brought up was a hot topic for right now. I don't know if you've
Mhm.
heard, there's a question kind of going around if it's okay for us to be able to take a sip of water during our sessions or maybe even snack. Would you like to share your input on that?
Yes, my input is stay hydrated because we are talking. And as we know, talking does dry out our throats when we're talking and when we're speaking for an extended amount of time. However, I could see the discourse being present and why it's relevant because for many people who are therapists, we assume that we are doing all the talking, especially you're taught that in grad school to have an ongoing conversation back and forth. But I was taught by some really skilled professionals that told me you should actually be talking less as a therapist. Now, it doesn't mean you won't get thirsty. So my recommendation is take your sips of water. You can mute yourself, let them know I'm listening. I'm still writing things down while I'm sipping. Now, when it comes to eating, I don't want to be controversial, but I've never eaten in session before. So I can't say that I all the way agree with that one. I think I may feel a little dismissed if my therapist was like chewing in my ear. That might be distracting. However, if they're chewing gum, mints, or like candy to keep them awake, that's okay. If we have full meals, that's a little debatable.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for
Yes.
sharing on that. And I think the eating part could definitely be case-based because we do want to be aware
hmm
of any eating disorders. Of course, have respect for the client, that short time that they have with us. It's just an
So
hour,
true.
15 minutes, depending on our company or who our private practice and insurance, right, that we're claiming.
Yes.
So
And that time
yeah,
goes by so fast and we only have 54 minutes with the client. And then to expect us to try to stuff an entire lunch throughout the workday is usually pretty tough for therapists. But that's also a sign, too, that we have not planned our day out effectively to incorporate self-care or really identify our own basic needs, which is eating, which is sleeping, taking breaks, getting sunlight. So if therapists are not doing that, then yes, they would be probably drinking or eating more throughout session, which could take away from the client connection that you have.
definitely. Thank you for sharing that with us, especially with your experience as a supervisor.
Mhm.
Um, with this, I was sharing your experience on evaluations. So, can you share with us when social workers, therapists expand into consulting, training, even these evaluations, what ethical questions should they ask themselves first?
They should first probably start with asking themselves why they're wanting to expand and what is the impact they're seeking within their personal careers. I think that's a question that doesn't get explored enough because there is so much content relevant on social media or in Facebook groups and even throughout other podcasts where people are saying diversify, diversify, diversify. But why? What's the purpose? What's the point? What is your overall goal, whether it's financial, whether it's educational or social advocacy? For me, social advocacy is tied into everything I do as a social worker. And even before then, my background is in criminal justice. So I always had just a knack for justice. I love working with attorneys. In my past life, I was also a paralegal before I worked in community mental health. So for me, doing immigration evaluations ties back to that first version of Shawan that entered college, just open to the world and wanting to help people in a different way, in a way that really went against the justice system at the time. But I would ask clinicians to think about their own experience before they even approach social work school. So outside of just wanting to help people, if you took that question away, what do you want to do as you diversify your career and as you grow in your career? Because you won't always be in year 0 through 3, 3 to 6. Eventually, you'll get to year 10, 20, and hopefully longer than that. So finding your own purpose is going to be key. Also, removing the need to make money from everything that we do. Some things aren't about money. So you can diversify your income and your impact by being present. It doesn't mean you have to get rich off of this. But because I think social workers have a bad taste in their mouth when anyone talks about expanding and talks about money with it, it makes even other social workers become a little shunned and not know should they be doing this from a financial standpoint or from purpose. My advice is purpose first. The money will come naturally depending on how you decide to give your time and how you decide to expand your impact.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for sharing all of that
Of course.
important information. And with this, how do clinicians assess whether they're practicing within their scope? How can they get started with this specifically?
Yes, with immigration evaluation specifically, you want to look at are you already working with clients on an everyday basis, even as a therapist? Because although you're not a therapist to the client in front of you, who is usually a migrant or of the immigrant population, you won't be providing therapeutic services, but you are using clinical language the entire time and the same clinical skills. You're assessing them using the assessment skills you already have throughout the PHQ-9s, throughout GAD-7s, ACE questionnaires, PTSD screenings. And then you're also watching out for things that come up inside those clinical interviews, which are one-to-one and usually virtually, but sometimes in person. So that means when I see a client who is of an immigrant population, I'm doing their evaluation. I'm assessing first for 2 hours over Zoom, just how me and you are right now. And as I'm assessing them and we're talking about their trauma or their migrant experience and what brought them to United States and how they want to stay here, things are coming up for them, which are usually emotions first. So there are tears, right? There's someone becoming flushed. There's stumbling over words. There's misunderstandings. And I'm also having to ask if they want to take a break and give themselves time to actually process what's happening. Because for many people, they haven't told these stories out loud. So using the same clinical skills you do in therapy in an accelerated time is a different skill set, but it's one that can be learned and trained. And I think there's a deep appreciation for people who focus on populations like this who don't have a voice and don't have many advocates, especially in this political climate.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for mentioning that part of having to ask the client if they're needing a break,
Hmm.
especially with migrant evaluations. As you mentioned, this might be the first time they're telling this story. And
Yes.
so checking in on your space, checking in on if the client is comfortable, and noticing even maybe before of that they haven't told their story before, they haven't been asked these questions or had a conversation about this. So thank you
Yes.
for sharing that with us.
For many of the times, we're their first mental health practitioner that they've seen. So they have maybe heard about therapy, maybe out of all the cases I've done, Hmm. Maybe only, I would say, a handful, no more than 10, have heard about what therapists are, what they do, and what the purpose of this evaluation is. I'm usually having to explain that within my informed consents and talking about limitations and scopes and what my role is while we're working together and then thereafter. So it is also our opportunity and our responsibility ethically to explain what our role is and how it plays a part to their clinical narrative and how we're trying to be as objective as possible in sharing their stories for other people to read and determine the outcome. So I think that's an important piece too.
Yes, definitely. And maybe even simplifying some things of our introduction. I know one time working with small children, they're like, oh, doctor. And I'm like, no, we're not even in
Yes.
a medical or like wearing a white coat, but they see someone in their
Hmm.
eyes maybe as very important. We're maybe holding our, file or just different things. And it's this professional is stepping in. Um, and so reassuring our clients of what our role is and sharing what is it that we do specifically, explaining, not just saying, I'm a counselor, I'm a social worker, I'm a therapist. We want to
Hmm.
explain the roles in that because it can be very confusing coming from another country, another culture, even language. We want to make
Absolutely.
sure that we're speaking in their language as well, right?
Yes,
Um,
speaking in their language or definitely leaning on our community partners to be interpreters. That's one of the other questions I get from therapists who want to explore immigration evaluations, even throughout the training. People ask, what if I don't speak a different language? That is what interpreters are present for, what they get trained in, and that is what their job is. So I work with interpreters and I use various websites to vet them first, but then you can also use your county, who normally has an entire record of people who got certified by your county, city, and state to be an interpreter independently. So you can always lean on other people too to support the client in this matter, which is the best way to do it. Ethically, we shouldn't be asking our clients' family members for immigration evaluations to translate for us, because then we also may write things incorrectly that could impact their reports and their statements that would not allow them to stay here. So there's some limitations with that too.
yeah, definitely looking at that ethically. Thank you.
Hmm.
Um, you've shared on multi-passionate paths, right? So
Yes.
can you share with us how is it that we don't want to cap our income impact, or how is it that social workers or clinicians can pursue this income expansion?
Yeah, I think the best way to do it is to hone in on the skills that you naturally have and your abilities that stand out and that come easiest for you versus everyone else. So for me, I love talking. Podcasts are my thing. I love speaking on the podcast. I love doing videos online, whether it's on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. I love expanding the knowledge that we have because many people just shy away from it. So I'm like, actually, I'll be the voice for us and I'm going to take up space here. So because of that, I use my voice to expand and really lean into the multi-passionateness of me by just allowing myself to get comfortable in those spaces and then speak about things I'm passionate about. What I think other people could do too is look at the skills that they like. So if you're someone that likes to create courses, court creation digitally is a really great avenue stream or revenue stream, I'm sorry, for multi-passionate entrepreneurs. If you want to do something like making cards, affirmation cards, journals for your clients, there should really be probably a book or a journal for the migrant experience that I could partner and create and have that as an offering, right, with the clients that I see for immigration evaluations, but I haven't thought about doing that yet. Anywho, I do think it's important for you to lean into your creativity, lean into your passions, and lean into things that come easiest for you so that you can expand into that naturally without it feeling forced or without that feeling of imposter syndrome coming up.
Definitely. Thank you for sharing those ideas with us and how you've expanded as well. And with this, it can bring about how do we maintain clear boundaries when we're working multiple roles, such as being a therapist, being a supervisor, a trainer, someone who has their own podcast or their own
Mhm.
book and cards. How do we maintain those clear boundaries there?
I think boundaries start with capacity. So, a big way that you can maintain your own boundaries or even create your boundaries as someone who's exploring various things outside of a traditional role. So, let's say you are only doing or working 9 to 5 as a social worker, and then you want to add in private practice. What is the boundary and cutoff time going to be around when you want to stop working? And when I say stop working, not stop seeing clients, but what's the time that you want to stop actually doing your notes and close your laptop? That's important. What are things you're not willing to do or people you're not willing to work with versus just trying to fill up your class or your courses or your caseload? So boundaries, even in capacity of space and time, those come in factor. And then I would also say boundaries in regard to the things that you're saying yes to, which is a big thing people struggle with, especially mental health professionals who are trained to help no matter what. We find ourselves saying yes to so many things that pull us away from things that may be our purpose. And so I would start to evaluate how often you're saying yes and then the why behind it, because that's usually where you can rework your boundaries and find out that you were overcompromising your experience and your time and how you feel for the needs of others when that's not what you're supposed to do when you diversify. It's supposed to be easier.
Yes, definitely. And so this is where we have to look into
Yes.
declining opportunities
Hmm.
because of the roles, maybe overlapping, or again, our time and taking care of ourselves, making sure that we're showing up the next time that we have to, right? Not having these extremely long days without lunch, without any self-care that we're needing, and rest, of course. So
Of course.
thank you for
And even
sharing that.
working at home for people who are still working at home post-COVID. I think the biggest boundary I see with other mental health professionals is we're behind the screen a lot or we're in our office all day. Right now, you probably are seeing the orange background. It's blurred out, but it is my home office. And I've never seen a client in person, even for therapy or immigration evaluations. So for me, in doing this work for what, going on 7 years almost, being in the office can feel very isolating and tight. A big boundary I have is to make sure that I carve out time throughout each month to incorporate self-care and also to plant myself as a facilitator of a support group for other mental health clinicians so I can have coworkers. Not for any other reason, not just to, make another revenue stream, but I need someone to talk to outside these four walls so that I can make sure that I'm doing the right things within my practice. I'm supporting myself. I'm having healthy communication, separately from just client-facing work. So I would say also lean into that too. Know that you're at home and you are isolated. So then what does that look like to have a life outside of your work? That is a big boundary realignment that most people have to do.
Yes, definitely having a community networking, but in
Mhm.
ways that are positive for us. So thank you.
Yes, of course.
Um, And you provide clinical supervision for multiple groups of supervisees.
Yes.
What are some ethical considerations in becoming especially important when supervision is also part of the clinical business model here?
It's important for me as a clinical supervisor that my supervisees know when they approach me that they're not getting any business coaching. No business coaching, no immigration evaluation trainings. We are solely here to make sure that you understand what the role of being a social worker is inside and out. How are you adjusting to your workplace? What are ethical dilemmas that are arising? How are you meeting with your clients? And are you demonstrating clinical skills throughout this 2-year process? That was a big boundary I had to set from the very beginning because most people find me on social media or through marketing measures. That means number one, marketing is working, which is great. But number two, that could cause for the lines to get conflicted on what the role is that I have. But because I'm in that power differential of being over someone's career for these 2 years in a supportive way, I'm the one that has to set the standard on what it looks like to be ethically sound within this space. So, what I try to make sure to do is always approach supervision in the most structured way as possible, meaning I give each supervision group time to explore and do clinical check-ins with me. They start off very easy at first, more of how is work going? How are your boundaries? How are you taking care of yourself? Over time, they see it expand where I'm asking them questions about how they incorporated a clinical value or a social work skill or an ethical dilemma that they had to play a part in and what was their role in it. Can they explain that to me? So it starts off very soft, then goes into more challenging, and also then we incorporate a training usually every session that we meet. So I already have maybe well over 48 trainings just for clinical supervision to last me throughout 2 years of each group that I have, that I just rotate through and also add to. So it's different. It's different. It's rewarding work, but I keep it that structured and I have those type of boundaries there very strong because I want to make sure that they get what they need out of this, which is to become an ethical clinical social worker that can practice independently of me.
Yes, definitely. Choosing a supervisor is so important, and having that, as you shared, is so important because we want to make sure that the supervisees are learning so much as before they go into that clinical field there.
Yes.
Um, So it's great to hear what you do as a supervisor. How is it that anyone wanting to jump into this clinical role, needing to do their hours, what should they look for when choosing a supervisor and getting all of this great experience?
Yeah, they first want to identify maybe what they want to do within their career first, which may be a big question for someone who's newly graduating. I know this because I do clinical interviews to see if they're ready to, number one, join clinical supervision, but number two, if we're a good fit. And two of the questions I ask is what is their current role that they have, and then where do they see themselves within 2 years? For most people, they say, I have no clue. That is natural to say. And so I want anyone who's listening to this to understand it's okay to not know exactly where you want to end up clinically. But I would encourage you to think about that question and just have it on your mind because someone may ask you. Because as you ask this question and someone has nothing, it only allows me to fill in the space about things that I've done as a clinical supervisor. And then you may say, oh, yeah, I want to do that too. That's not what I'm looking for in clinical supervision. I'm looking for someone who wants to expand clinical skills, learn confidence in working with clients, want to open up their own private practice, or want to explore medical social work. And if I hear they have those skills, and if I have those skills as a social worker and a supervisor, we automatically connect. So I would encourage people to think about what it is they want to enhance within those 2 years when finding a clinical supervisor. You want to make sure that it's not a misalignment. So if you know you want to do therapy with children and adolescents, but that person has only worked with adults and geriatrics, that would be a misalignment to private practice. Not saying they don't have the skills, but it would be better to learn from someone within their own scope. And then I will also look for someone who is able to work around you, even in the group dynamic. Meaning, although I see clinicians in group settings for clinical supervision, we have time where we're independently evaluating. If you need to step away from the group and you feel like it's just not a good fit, I have the opportunity to work with individuals. So I will look for someone who has that same flexibility. Like, what if group dynamic isn't for me? And what if I feel small here or I don't feel comfortable expressing my thoughts here? Because we're human and we're meeting strangers that we have to connect with for 2 years in this safe space. I would also look for someone who's just really big about culture and community because having group supervision is that. That's at the core, is how is this community building one another? Can they support one another? If the group is silent, can someone jump in and give feedback without me saying it? So I'm looking and assessing for all of those things. I want someone to look for that too. Of like, don't just look at this as handing your money over for 2 years externally, but look for what you want to invest in and the space you want to grow in for those 2 years.
Yeah, thank you.
Mhm.
And I think you've shared a little bit on like what you're doing here as a supervisor. But I would like to also address anyone who is a supervisor. How is it that we can avoid supervision feeling transactional or disconnected from this professional development?
Make relationships intentionally, even though you're in the position of power. So I think it comes down to identifying, even if you have, right now, I have three groups, right? Three groups, two have six, one has five. So inside my three groups, I know individually where this person works, if they have children, are they married, where they like to vacation, are they on vacation now while we're in supervision? What barriers are they personally dealing with? Although I'm not their therapist, what barriers are coming up for them personally because we have built and established trust, right? But then I also know independently what their goal was when they started supervision, where they are currently, and I can identify strengths for them to say, I think that's a skill we want to sharpen. Or I think you've been talking more about consulting lenses. Let me bring in someone to help support that goal for you so that we can make sure you can do this when you finish supervision. So I think it's on the supervisor to really take time to know the person that's inside the group and not look at them just as an exchange or as a transactional relationship. And then post supervision, although an ethical dilemma would be dual relationships, even in this role. We want to make sure that we're not walking into coaching them or to marketing them in any way. So instead, what I try to do is prioritize once you finish clinical supervision, you apply for your exam, you go and take a course on how to pass your exam, right? You do that separately. You may come back to me and say, I just want some advice or a consultation around the steps needed to start private practice. More than likely, we've already started the conversation in supervision. So for me, I make sure I'm not charging for that consultation. These are not my business clients. They are still always my supervisees. Now we are colleagues. So that means I can help support you in this goal and tell you and give you some advice on which way to go when it comes to open up a private practice, what's working and what's not, because I'm naturally watching trends. So I think don't make it transactional by adding additional cost, but also get to know the people that you're working with for 2 years and then support their goals thereafter.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So we can
Yes.
have both of those perspectives for whoever is tuning in with us today.
Hmm.
Um, we also shared your experience with millennial women of color. Um, Now, this might be something that's demanding caregiving and professional roles of the two, right? So how has that clinical lens shaped the way that you think about career expansion and worthiness?
So many ways. And that's a great question because for most people who come to therapy with me, an issue they struggle with is worthiness or being too tied into their work. It's usually one of the two. Worthiness meaning I can't even develop or think about a life outside the people that I'm caring for, which usually are going to be their children. It could be friends, their spouses, or family. And so they're trying to figure out if I have this life that seems safe and that seems like it's maintaining the status quo. I mean, I have everything I need. Why would I even want more? Why am I feeling that pull to obtain more? A lot of women struggle with that in the millennial population. And so I think when they find me in therapy, they're able to have a safe space to explore that feeling and then get down to the root of why it exists and then how we can go for our dreams after that. That's key. So just the worthiness piece and then being tied to your work. If you're a millennial, that means you're just like me who's listening to this right now as a CEU and someone within their career who was taught you go to high school, you go to college, you get a career, you stay in that career and don't leave. What that can make you feel is that you're tied entirely to your career and then you lose your identity within that. Not knowing there's other things that you can consider or incorporate to make you have fulfillment, I'm sorry, and happiness. So I think what comes up for most women I work with who are millennials is they've dedicated their careers for 10, 15 years, similar to me. I feel myself and my clients all the time. And then they feel that guilt about wanting to leave it and expand in a different way because of disappointment, because of fear, and because of chancing your life on this dream that you want over here. It's a scary feeling. So they may need some support with making that leap.
Yes. So with that, how can career expansion become part of reclaiming your identity rather than just doing more work? How is it that we can do that?
It's a good question. I like that question. Okay, so what I think we can do to not make it more work first, I'll tackle that one first. Think about skills that naturally expand on what you have, meaning you have to look at your skills as transferable first. So, one skill that's transferable for social workers or for passionate entrepreneurs. I would say if you already know how to assess someone in biopsychosocials, you know how to do psychological evaluations. That can be transferred in not only immigration, but also in forensics, also in substance abuse, also in bariatrics, like and also even personal injury. I have someone who's a supervisee with me right now that does personal injury evaluations. At the core, it's biopsychosocials, a longer one, but that's what it is. Same thing with treatment plans. Same thing with learning how to do assessment, CANS assessments for children and for even populations of DFPS, investigative skills. And then there's also documentation skills. So if you're someone who loves, right now, AI is a thing, right? We're always asking, is it ethical? How can it be used? If you took time to learn more about it, invest your time in actually using it in a way that it can benefit your career and save you some time, you may see that naturally is of interest to you too. So then you may decide to host a CEU about it, how to train on it because of the research you've done. That's a way to not add more work or to make this any more difficult. Start with your interests and see what other roles fit into that same category. And then, can it replace the hour of work that you already have versus adding more hours to your workday? That's how I incorporated immigration evaluations. I took away a workday to provide a 3 to 4 hour evaluation.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And
Mhm.
with this too, of doing evaluations, these sessions, informed consent is so important. So, what should clinicians know about informed consent when they're providing services outside of these traditional therapy settings?
Informed consent should detail down to the T what the purpose of you being in this role is, how it differs from your therapeutic role, so there is no dual relationships crossed, and then also the scope and limitation. So how are you supporting the client through this experience they're having with you? If it's of immigrations, if it's in any kind of even supervisory role for supervision, I call it a contract, but ultimately it's an informed consent, meaning how will I distribute services to you? What are the costs associated? What are limitations? What are boundaries need to be in place? And how will this be evaluated? Everything is inside of a written contract so that we have a standard that we set on as clinicians and that's ethical that we can follow and that could also be upheld if needed to be, right? But also, I think within immigration evaluations, the scope is a little bit different because there is a bottom clause that I put inside mine because of our ethics. And it says, even though we're talking for 2 hours about your mental health experience and your migrant journey, and I'm asking you in-depth questions and possibly giving you a psychological diagnosis using the DSM-5, after this point, I cannot be your therapist because that is a dual relationship. So that is a really heavy clause within it. And so what it tells them, though, is that even though we have these conversations, I've explained my informed consents, I'm a social worker through and through, you're still going to get resources from me even if you think you don't need them. So let's say if there's a case of emergency, which is also inside my informed consent, that you mentioned suicide, I still have a duty to report that ethically. If I mean, you mention any kind of children abuse, any kind of familiar abuse with someone of your elder or a family member, I still have to report that. If you were to mention to me suicide ideation, I'm responsible for giving you the 988 helpline, but also contacting the attorney outside of my scope to make sure they can do a welfare check on you because I don't have your home address. You're not my client in that way. So there are some limitations that need to be written down, just like those I'm speaking about. And same thing with supervision ones too.
Yeah, definitely so important. I like that you mentioned having some of that information as far as their address or someone else to reach out to, especially if
Hmm.
we're doing these virtual services. We
Yes.
still need to make these reports, or if it's a crisis that is going on and needing to get them support, especially if we're far away from them.
Yeah. And for many clients who are within Texas, I mean, we live in Texas, so we know how huge it is. There are clients that live in cities I've never heard of before. So it's just different. Even in Florida, I live in Texas, licensed in Florida, licensed in Missouri. I don't know every city there, and I'm from Missouri. I don't know every city there. Only Kansas City, where I'm from and where I'm born and raised, and where my family is. But if you stay in Odessa or in Joplin, Missouri, or Jefferson City, I don't know the street names. I wouldn't know how to get safety to you. So it's important that in informed consent that I share that experience of if this comes up, I have to notify the attorney who's not probably going to know about the whole entire conversation that we have, but I have to give them a scope of what's happening so that we can make sure that you're safe because these feelings that we're talking about may be very triggering and you've never sat with them before. Versus in therapy, you know you may see me next week or at least the week after. You may have gotten a journal from me or from a different provider where you can write out your emotions. Immigration evaluations are different. And the same thing for supervision. You may have a feeling that comes up in supervision because you didn't like what someone said. Okay, then what is the correct route on how that can be handled? Inside informed consents, inside the contracts, it states if at any time you need me to carve out 1 hour, 2 hours just to talk about things that came up that were triggering to you or a conflict or an event that you didn't appreciate inside supervision, let's do that as soon as possible, normally within the week that we have supervision, so that we can make sure this is still a safe environment for you. So those things should be written. I think we have ethical responsibility to do that as professionals.
Yes, definitely. And advising the next person on what to look at as we're doing that referral or depending
Hmm.
on what is it that's going on there. So thank you. Um, what does ethical leadership look like for clinicians who are training or mentoring other professionals?
Integrity is key. So always just having integrity throughout anything that you create, especially when it comes to coaching or any kind of webinars, any kind of workshops, CU trainings, doing what it is you say you do. and not having to bring anybody else's story into the work that you have done for yourself throughout your career expansion. I think that's going to be number one. Also, being trustworthy within this field. I mean, we're working with people who are also very vulnerable, even as a coach. So, separately from working with therapy clients, who that's a vulnerable population, immigration, vulnerable, even supervisors who are looking forward to getting their career started, they could still be vulnerable. So are people that you decide to coach personally or they come to workshops or things you host. So making sure that number one, you're providing the service you said that you would, you are giving them their money's worth when they show up for you because they are supporting your career too. And then having that leadership to showcase what it is you do outside of the space you're teaching them in. So most people know when they join a workshop or a webinar that I host, they can find me somewhere online talking about the same things because that has established trust, but it is also what I do within my career every day. So there's never a day I'm not teaching what I'm going to expand on. This is what I do, right? So for some people, it can be a misalignment if that leadership is not there. You can't lead anyone by not showcasing what you're not doing and then telling them, hey, buy this for me. I'll teach you when you get there. Oh no, that's not leadership.
Yeah, definitely. And that might lead to how is it that leaders can remain open to feedback, just sharing it with anyone who's listening in here, especially while holding professional standards.
Yeah, making sure we're asking the questions to each individual in a personalized way. So for some people, the evaluations may look like you scheduling time after something you've hosted or trained on. So maybe there's an open Q&A, but then double up and ask them for to complete an evaluation form. Ask them for feedback. I know we don't like doing feedback evaluation forms, even for CEUs, but they are helpful to let someone know what they can be doing better at or what's worked or what they didn't like. And even as an immigration evaluator, as someone who trains, I remember someone giving me feedback on something. It was around a part of the curriculum where she was like, I'm missing how to know the exact phrase of the experience for an immigrant when they first meet a client. I was like, or first meet a client, first meet an attorney. And I kept trying to get to like, okay, can you tell me what you mean? I didn't understand it via email. And then we finally got together, like on a phone call, she was saying what I really was asking for is do you have a visual aid that can show me when someone needs an evaluation and then all the way what happens to the end? So that was feedback for something in my program that I was missing that now I've incorporated because something that someone didn't like. They feel like something was missing here. It's my responsibility to listen to that feedback, to provide it, and then incorporate and offer it to everyone. But had I not had the space or even any kind of form or survey to say what's working well, what's not, I wouldn't have known. I would just be blind and just keep doing what I want to do because that's just how people work sometimes. But I think we work like that independently enough in private practice. So in every other area, go ahead and open up yourself for feedback and be willing to sit with it and correct it. And then if you do make one correction in some program that you offer, make it to everyone because it'll probably benefit everyone.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for sharing that example because it takes a look into us as individuals taking a step back from how we learn is how we build our programs or how we build
Yes.
what we're working on.
Yeah.
And then as we get that feedback, it's like, oh wait, like you're learning this way. Let me, add that
hmm
visual piece if it may be that in this example. So
Yeah,
thank
you
you
have
for
to
sharing.
consider that. Yeah, when you're working with people just of different learning styles, everyone's not going to like hearing audio. They might want visual. Everyone doesn't want a video. They just want audio. So it's like it's a learning game, but that's why I like it because I'm always learning as I'm teaching. And as I'm learning, I'm constantly developing and adding more things to the program that can make people stronger evaluators. So there's no harm in making you a stronger one. I don't want to make you a weaker one. I want to make you prepared for this work and to be able to hold space for this and develop a career out of it versus a cash grab. So I typically won't even lead for immigration evaluations with the money you can make from it. That's also a part of leadership. The money part will come once you learn how to do the work. I want you to learn how to do the work first because this is very serious. It is a legal document, and I want you to be passionate about it. If you're not and you're only in it for money, you won't see much. And that is just the truth. So I think you can showcase your leadership through that too, the way you promote things. That matters.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
hmm
Um, with this, we're talking a lot about, dipping into other things here. So, what would you say to a clinician who feels called to expand their career, but they're feeling afraid, whether it be judgment of peers or coworkers or even imposter syndrome? What would you say to these clinicians that are, afraid to jump into that next role?
Being afraid is natural, and it's just a part of the emotional will that we all have to experience. Being afraid, being fearful, being scared, being hesitant, those are emotions that come from things that feel unfamiliar, like expansion, when we're taught to stay inside of a world of safeness, which is our careers. But that is how we were raised. So I would also look at it like, what have we learned throughout our life that needs to be unlearned or that's blocking something for us that's not making us feel fulfilled? And I'm of the firm belief that when people start thinking about diversifying their careers, it is because that feeling is there where something's not working anymore, something feels misaligned, I want more. And so if that's there, that means you can learn and train yourself to get more, to become more, to bring in more, if you allow yourself to let go of the feelings that are always fleeting, which are those ones on the more hesitant side. Now, at first, will things feel easy? No. I cannot lie to you and say that anything that I've talked to you all about today has been easy. It's definitely been a transference of me and of growing professionally, but it's been an expansion that was needed. So it isn't always going to be easy. It isn't always going to be fun. There's going to be times where you're building and working later nights to develop something that's bigger than you, but that is how impact comes back around. So it's a matter of letting those feelings of being afraid, scared, feel like an imposter, just stay fleeting for a little bit while you develop this. Because on the back end, when you see the fulfillment that you'll get, or the lives that you'll change, or the careers that you'll impact from what you built, it'll all be worth it. So I think letting them exist, allowing yourself to feel them, and then knowing that they are there until they're not. One day they will turn into empowerment. One day imposter syndrome won't even be a thing if you lean in more into the confidence of what you already have experience in. I think imposter syndrome comes up when we're around a lot of people with big personalities, a lot of confidence and experience, and we're trying to figure out how can we be like them. But if we remove that piece away from it and just be like us, we'll save ourselves a lot of stress.
Yeah. And noticing that we're already sitting there,
We're
or
already
already
in
in
it.
those rooms.
Yeah, like we
Yeah.
you know we graduated, right? And we didn't get honorary degrees. You can't do that in social work. They make us, especially in Texas, go be competitive and actually obtain degrees, obtain your licensures. Even now, I think for medical social workers, not only do you need your LMSW, LCSW, you need your ACM and CCM. So they're even trying to bring you all into the nursing role. That wasn't there when I was working in medical social work, and that's where I did my internship and my first year of clinical social work. So it's just things are always developing and advancing, and sometimes there are professional metrics in place to make us grow more. So then you're not an imposter because you did pass those exams. That's a proven. So I think if we lean more into actually, I did do that. No one helped me. AI did not exist during this time. You can't fake that test. So I would lean more into that when imposter syndrome comes up to just know that you're qualified to do the work. You just never experienced this side of it. So it's going to feel uncomfortable in the beginning until it doesn't. But we got to get to that part first.
Yeah, definitely. Right now that you were taking a moment to kind of look back at some of your own career experience,
Mhm.
what are some of the ethical principles that guided you in decision making?
Definitely maintaining dignity and worth of a person, no matter what role that I'm in, especially clinically, work with people inside the hospital settings, working in community mental health, working for insurance companies, and even some specialized managed care populations. So just knowing that everyone deserves rights that they have, everyone deserves social supports, resources, and connections to community that they otherwise wouldn't get if they're underpopulated or underserved. Definitely maintaining relationships, looking at a person in regard to service. So, and usually in everything that I've expanded into, and even things when I first became a social worker, is how am I serving this person? Am I being the best servant for them? That's usually key for me too. And then just knowing about the importance of human relationships, knowing that I'm a part of someone's ecosystem in a very close way when I'm their therapist. And I like that. That actually feels good to know that, okay, if someone tells me things they would trust their best friend with or their partner with. Same thing when you work in the community. If you're working in insurance, you may be frustrated by something not getting approved. Who do you tell? Normally, the care navigator or the resource provider. And then we get to know you and look at the full picture and advocate for you. So I think some of those things and values have definitely stood out within my career. Service, dignity, and worth of a person, always maintaining integrity, and then the importance of human relationships.
So thank you for sharing that. I think those were some really great perspectives to kind of keep in mind or maybe note of, some way we can remind ourselves of along the way of our journey.
Yeah, never forget what you're doing all of this for, and then what our career is based in. I think if we operate out of that, things are not that difficult. It's just a matter of like, okay, where do we fit in here? Can we carve our own lane out while still maintaining these values? And across the board, I can see in every role that I have now, those still exist. They never go away because they're intrinsically placed now.
Yeah. So with this, for the clinicians listening in, you all that are ready to take one step beyond your traditional roles, what are some practical and ethical first steps that they can take, maybe even this month?
Yeah, even this month, I would say even researching opportunities where there are CEUs like this being offered, or CEUs that revolve around just the ethics in career making or career mapping. I think that's a very important piece to start with. Because if you have someone near you or in reach that can show you that this can be done, you will likely take the step that's scaring you the most. So we don't want anyone to jump into their career and start expanding without knowledge of, can we do this ethically? Can we not overcharge for things? Can we keep it affordable, right? But then also, can we lean into things or skills that we have without adding more certifications to us? So I think the first step could be looking for opportunities like this where they're offered, even if it's in person or virtually. I think starting there is key.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And in closing our conversation here, if you could give our clinicians who are listening in a message about expanding their careers, of course, ethically and confidently, what would that message be?
My message would be don't do it for the money, do it for the impact. The income will come. Keep impact first and not impact right now where you are, but impact also for the future. As a social worker, as a practitioner, as someone who is expansive all the time, our reputation are the key to our career and us maintaining and also us developing and continuing to have support to fulfill all the things we want to create. So just make sure that that stays intact and also who you are as a human being. So if you're someone who loves to serve people, do that out of your heart. Don't worry about the income. It always comes back.
Yeah, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Before we wrap up on this topic, is there anything else that you would like to add to share with our audience today?
Last thing I would probably add is if you're at LMSW hearing this, go ahead and get your full licensure. It allows you to practice independently. Also, it comes along with confidence. It comes along with so many more transferable skills that are needed to really be a pillar within your own community and within this field. There's a reason that the boards say don't stop. And I can see that now as someone who trains LMSWs, as someone who watches people go through the experience and their careers take off different places once they get this LCSW. So definitely invest in clinical supervision. Make sure your supervisor is someone that you can grow with while you're in there for 2 years and beyond, and get the certifications you need, not the ones that cost thousands of dollars without you trying to see first if they're needed. So start just with at least your full licensure in whatever city and state that you're in.
So thank you so much for sharing this insightful information for us. I hope that you all are able to take a lot of things from here that were shared as we learned about our ethical career expansion here. I do want to share some of our resources on this next slide here that you all can look into a little bit further. Of course, we always have our code of ethics on here of something that we can refer back to. So as that reminder there and other resources on here, you all can look into. But I just want to thank you so much for your time and sharing your expertise with us. As she shared, she does have a podcast, a wonderful website that I was able to see as well. And of course, all of these great resources. So if you all ever need to look at more information, you all are welcome to, of course, listen back at this recording or also do a quick search. And you can see all of her great information there on her website.
Thank you so much. And everyone who's listening can definitely find me at cultureofhealthplc.com or on all platforms as Shawan Alexander.
I hope you enjoyed this continuing education course from Agents of Change. Want to earn your CE credits for this course? Visit agentsofchangetraining.com or the link in the description to purchase the course and take the post test. If you're looking for more CEs, check out our unlimited plan. You will get unlimited access to 150 plus ASWB and NBCC approved continuing education courses for one low annual fee. We're always adding new courses. Did I mention we also have 5 free CE credits available too? Check it out at agentsofchangetraining.com.